culture eaters. We are back today again with a new recipe. This one is for a group I haven't done on video yet. I've been participating for a few years with a group that's called Food and Flicks, and we just watch a movie that a host recommends for that month, which is related to food. It's a really fun group. Really, we have a great time, and you make a recipe that was either in a movie or that you are inspired from by the movie. This month we are doing Pan's Labyrinth. I had seen this movie twice before, and honestly I never paid attention to the food in it before, so I saw it again for a third time. Good thing I like the movie. And yeah, there's quite a bit of food in it. I'll talk about that more in the blog post, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about the recipe I decided to choose for this post. If you haven't seen the movie before, it's really for adults. I know the main character is a child, but it's for adults. It's can be scary for children to watch, but it's kind of like a really creepy, really grim fairy tale. It's got some Alice in Wonderland kind of feel a little bit to it, but it's set in, I think, in 1944 in Spain during the Spanish Civil War, which is also at the same time then all the other problems in Europe from that time. And it's this little girl who is forced with her mother to move to a very mean general's house that her mother married, and the mother's pregnant from this general. And the girl is trying to escape this very miserable, cruel world that she's forced to live in, and develops some scenes with some fantastical creatures, and she has to complete tasks. And we found out at the end whether she ends up in the proper world that she should have been in the first place, or if the current world that she's in is the one that she is from in reality. So watch the movie to find out. Fairy tales are not as pretty as we've made them out today. So the film kind of celebrates the origins of fairy tales, how they could be really scary and creepy at the same time, with a potentially happy ending. It depends which way you see it. So the recipe I decided, the scene that inspired me was a couple of times the mother is having problems with her pregnancy. So a faun in the story, which is there sort of a bit as a guide for the main character, Ophelia, tells her to take a mandrake root and put it in a glass of fresh milk and leave it under the bed of her mother, and feed it a few drops of blood every day. So I'll read you a little bit from a website about mandrake root. It's not an ingredient you're going to find, but I'm going to put up a picture for you to see. It's a plant or a root that's famous for looking like human beings. So there's a whole legend in medieval times about this root actually wanting to become human because it looks so much like a human being that's in the root and being tortured. So let me read you a couple of things. I found this really awesome article, which I'm going to link to below, from Wired, that actually my colleague found. It's really an entertaining read. Like, it's worth taking a read. It is said to come from the dripping of fat and blood and semen of hanged men. That's how the root grows. The monstrous scream from pulling out the root from the ground would bestow an agony and a death to anybody who was in earshot of the root being pulled out. So they often tied the end of the root to a rope and the other end to the tail of a dog, and they would run away and do something to frighten the dog. So the dog would run and rip out the root for the humans, and it was the reputation that the dog would die from the screaming of the root. So therefore humans would be safe in harvesting the roots. Mandrake roots are part of the nightshade family, which contains some toxins and can be highly poisonous to the human body, like solanine, but I think that's in larger quantities. Tomatoes and potatoes, by the way, are part of the nightshade family of plants. In larger quantities, the side effects of the mandrake root is delirium, gastrointestinal distress, or even shock. And it was used by the Greeks as an anesthetic for surgery. It was also used by the Greeks as an aphrodisiac by steeping the root in wine or vinegar. Some people wore it during medieval times around their neck to bring good luck and ward off evil. Even Joan of Arc was accused of carrying one on her regularly during her trials. So although I got really curious about the mandrake root, I wasn't going to find it at my local grocery store at any time soon to use it for a recipe for Pan's Labyrinth. But one article gave me an idea to use celery root because the roots, they don't look human, but they kind of have a little bit of an idea of the mandrake root. So I thought that was a really great idea. We're going to do a Spanish recipe and we want to recreate that bowl of milk with the mandrake root underneath the bed. So I found a recipe that actually dates from the Spanish Civil War. Like the timing is perfect with the movie. And it's called Poleà, and it's an Andalusian recipe. Basically like a porridge pudding that was consumed by the poor people because there were rations back then. They didn't have a lot of food. And I'm going to roast some of my celery root or mandrake root. So we're going to start by cutting our celery root. I'm going to want to keep the top because I might want to do something with the recipe for the decoration, for the creepy factor. And you want to cut off the rind. It's not the thickest, but you can see a little bit here. There's a section you want to cut it off away. Think like a ginger root a little bit. And now that you have it all clean, we're just going to cube it right now. And then we're going to put it in a baking sheet. I've got my celery root. I was going to say mandrake root, but my celery root on a baking sheet. I'm putting a little bit of oil on here and just a little bit of maple syrup. So separate your pieces out. And we're going to put it in the oven at 375 until they are nicely roasted and tender. So to make our polea, we will be cooking 1 liter of 2% milk with 4 to 5 heaping tablespoons of flour, 2 heaping tablespoons of honey, and 1 cinnamon stick. You're supposed to put the peel of a lemon. Totally forgot the lemon. So we're using a peel of a tangerine and just a dash of salt. So I'm just adding enough water to the flour and mix it properly. Everything's going to get added to the pot. Stove on a low heat, and we want to stir continuously. Adding my peel, my cinnamon stick, a dash of salt, 2 heaping teaspoons of honey, and we will gently stir that until it has thickened. I put the heat a little higher because it was really just taking forever, so I have it on medium, but I'm keeping a very close eye on it and I'm stirring all the time so the milk and flour do not burn at the bottom. But you can see it's smoking, so it's getting near the boiling point, which is what we want for the flour to thicken. It is a porridge in the soup category, so we don't want something super thick. It is going to remain a bit soupy while it's on the heat, but it's going to thicken a little bit on its own as it's cooling down in the serving dish. We are going to discard citrus peel and the cinnamon stick. This dish is usually served in a shallow dish, so I'm going to pour it in my chafing dish now, and we will leave that to cool on a counter at first before decorating it. My celery root is now out of the oven, nicely roasted and toasted and tender to do the mock bread cubes that we would normally put on the Spanish paella soup. And here is the final shot of our polea with roasted celery root. Here's a bowl already prepared for tasting. I must say, it might be poor people's food from the Spanish Civil War, but it does taste very good and it smells very good. My polea. It's very, very light sweetness-wise. It'd probably go really good for breakfast. I don't know if you can see the consistency. It's very porridge-like. And the celery root has like an earthy, lemony note to it. It's not a very pronounced vegetable, so it goes well.